President Biden threw his support behind Kamala Harris just minutes after ending his candidacy. You'll remember it was back in the early days of the administration when Biden tapped the VP as the border czar. And since then, the issue has become one of voters' top issues and one of the Biden administration's weakest points.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today, but I have before, and I'm sure I will again.
You know, I remember that like it was yesterday, March 22nd, 2021. Let's bring in Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott. She laughed, and it sort of became a thing, Governor, where those who were quick to criticize her were saying, you know, laughing Kamala. I think the President Trump. But that was a moment where she could have taken this extremely seriously. What was happening, let people know what she was doing about it. But she didn't, and she still hasn't. Welcome, Governor.
Well, thank you, Sandra. So you're spot on. But very importantly, that's not the only time that she laughed about what she was going to be doing on the border. And as our fellow Americans know, this is not a laughing matter. This is quite literally a matter of life and death. There have been far too many Americans, including Jocelyn, right here in the state of Texas, who lost their lives. Jocelyn was a 12-year-old girl who was raped and killed by two illegal immigrants. And so this is deadly dangerous. And what Americans need to understand is it looks like that person is going to be the Democrat nominee. She had one job, and that is to secure the border. She was the border czar, and she gets a grade of F- for her job on that border because we've had the largest number of illegal border crossings ever in the history of the country, not including more than just the murderers and rapists, but also an all-time record high of terrorists. We are at a precarious time in our history right now with this transition of power where terrorists will be seeking to come across the border that she is in charge of, that she is endangering because of her lack of responsibility to step up and secure the border.
Governor, you said that there were a couple of times that Kamala Harris laughed about the border. There was one there that we just played. Here is the other one. Listen to this.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, you know, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
All right, so that was early June 2021, June 25th, 2021. She did actually go down to the area of the border. She was in El Paso, visited a processing center. But when she gets on the stage, if she becomes the nominee, as is expected with President Trump on September the 27th, Trump could look her in the eye and say, here's what I did on immigration. What exactly was it that you did as border czar?
Well, you're spot on. And as you all know, there are two top issues in the United States. One is the inflation that's burning through the pocketbooks of our fellow Americans, and the other is the border. This ripping apart not just the state of Texas, but states across the country, whether it be people like Laken Riley being killed, whether it be police officers in New York City being assaulted, or whether it be the fentanyl that's killed, you know, literally tens of thousands of Americans. And so the border czar, Kamala Harris, has not done her job. She's a failure at one of the two most issues that Americans care most about. And I think Americans can and should and must reject her at the ballot box in November.
Well, they're already gearing up for this to be the issue to attack Kamala Harris on. This is a new Trump campaign ad, Governor, attacking Harris on the border.
If you ever wondered how Joe Biden could get the border so screwed up, remember, he had help.
Going at her right on that issue, Governor.
And justifiably so, because, again, the Trump administration understands this, and that is they are right on the issues that Americans care most about. One of those issues is the border. There's another issue that Kamala has talked about a lot, and that is trying to transition oil and gas workers to work on the Green New scam. And that also is an area that Americans are fed up with having the Green New Scam crammed down their throats. They want to have access to oil and gas, and Texas is the third largest producer of oil in the entire world. And we have so many jobs connected to it, but jobs also in states like Pennsylvania that will be consequential. If they get rid of energy jobs in Pennsylvania, that will destroy the Kamala Harris campaign.
In terms of how President Trump measures up against Kamala Harris on the issues important to people, I haven't seen any polling that details that, but we do have lots of polling of President Trump with President Biden. Here's how people feel about who they trust on the issues. When it comes to immigration, Trump leads 52-35. On the economy, Trump leads 54-40 over Biden. Foreign policy, 49-39. As I said, we don't have direct polling with Kamala Harris, but since she was, part of the Biden administration and those policies transfer to her, I would expect, Governor, that the numbers will be somewhat similar, if not identical, which would seem to really give Trump a leg up on at least some of the issues that are very, very important to people.
You're correct, John. I have seen some polling, part from the state of Texas, some other national polls that show pretty much that Kamala Harris is polling about the same as Joe Biden as it concerns Donald Trump. And again, going back, the reason is because the top issues are the top issues, jobs, the economy, inflation, and the border. And there's no escaping that by Kamala Harris, just like there was no escaping it from Joe Biden. Think about this for just one quick second. A lot of people were saying, well, Joe Biden had a problem because of his age. His age actually would not have mattered had Joe Biden been right on the policies and positions that Americans care most about. But because he was wrong on those issues, that made his age a disqualifying factor.
On that issue, there was breaking news just a few moments ago that from President Biden's doctor, his COVID symptoms have almost completely resolved, putting out a statement that he is continuing to work and do his duties as President of the United States. So that is the update from his doctor. Governor, great to have you on. Thanks for sticking with us through the breaking news earlier.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.